Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if medications are really the best way to help very young children with depression? Today we're diving into a critical look at a study that explored using fluoxetine, that common antidepressant for kids as young as 4 years old who were diagnosed with major depression. It's a pilot study, meaning it's a smaller, early-stage investigation to see if a larger one makes sense. But this look at the study raises some pretty significant questions. The researchers who wrote this critical response point out that what was planned in the study's initial blueprint, known as the protocol, didn't exactly match what ended up in the final published paper. Think of it like a recipe, and then someone changed a few key ingredients and steps halfway through cooking without telling anyone. For instance, the main thing they wanted to measure to see if the drug worked. The primary outcome changed from one specific checklist to another. Even the criteria for who could be in the study changed. These aren't small tweaks, they're like changing the entire main course without informing the dinner guests. This is another red flag. The CONSORT diagram is supposed to clearly show how participants moved through a study. Here, it suggests that more people were initially involved than were actually assessed or ended up in the treatment groups. It's like saying 90 people signed up for a marathon, but only 55 showed up to be measured for their bibs. And then only 45 actually got to the starting line and were assigned to different running lanes. This makes it harder to understand the true scope and how the groups were formed. This is a pretty straightforward but important point about how the placebo group was described. A placebo is supposed to be an inactive treatment, like a sugar pill, designed to look and feel like the real drug. Saying it has a dosage is scientifically inaccurate if it's truly inert. It suggests a misunderstanding or misstatement that can affect how we interpret the comparison between the drug and the placebo. Now, this is where things get really interesting and concerning. The study reported a very small improvement in the children who received the placebo. We expect some improvement in placebo groups, especially in studies with children, due to factors like regression to the mean, where extreme symptoms naturally tend to become less extreme over time and the attention they receive. But a 6.5% improvement is incredibly low, especially compared to the significant jump seen in the fluoxetine group. This low placebo response raises serious questions about whether the study was well designed to detect a real drug effect, and particularly if the blinding, meaning whether patients and researchers knew who was getting the real drug and who was getting the placebo, was successful. If people knew, it could understandably influence how they report their symptoms. Oh, this is a big one. The study claimed that no parents reported any adverse effects or side effects from the medication. But then the same paper mentions that 2 children in the fluoxetine group withdrew from the study because of agitation. Agitation is a known side effect of fluoxetine, especially in young children. So, to say no parents complained about adverse events, when some children had to stop the medication due to a clear side effect, is contradictory and highly implausible. It makes you wonder about the accuracy of the reporting and the safety monitoring. The absence of any reported side effects in children aged 4 to 6 also raises significant concerns about how safety was being overseen. This is a more technical point, but it goes to the heart of scientific transparency. When researchers report their findings, they should include not just the p-value, which is sort of like a fluke-o-meter, telling you how likely the result is due to random chance, but also the actual test statistics and degrees of freedom. These are like the raw ingredients that lead to the p-value. Without them, it is very difficult for other scientists to independently verify the results or even understand exactly how they were calculated. The paper also points out a significant discrepancy in the reported p-value for age compared to what they calculated themselves. Depression scores are usually whole numbers, meaning there are only so many ways you can combine the average score and the spread of scores, the standard deviation, while still making sense. Software like Grimmer can check if the reported averages and spreads are mathematically possible given these whole number scores. This critical analysis found that the reported numbers for depression scores in this study were implausible in several instances. It's like saying you have an average of 5.5 apples per basket when all the baskets only contain whole apples, and the way the numbers are presented just doesn't add up. This is where the reported effectiveness of fluoxetine in this study is really questioned. The researchers here calculated something called a standardized mean difference, or SMD. Think of it as a measure of how big the difference is in effect size between the drug and the placebo. The numbers they calculated are extremely large, much larger than what is typically seen in other studies of antidepressants for depression, both in adults and in children. Even the lowest end of their reported confidence intervals, which is a range where the true effect is likely to be, are far beyond what other studies find. This suggests the reported positive effect in the Shakibaei study might be an outlier and potentially not a reliable finding. So, to wrap it all up, this critical response highlights a whole host of potential problems with the Shakibaei study, from undeclared changes to the study plan, questionable placebo responses, implausible safety reporting, and statistically suspect results. The authors of this critique argue that the study's credibility is severely undermined. They're essentially calling for a deeper dive, an independent look at the raw data to really confirm or refute their concerns. It is important to remember that this is a critique of a pilot study, and pilot studies are meant to be small and exploratory. However, the issues raised here are significant, particularly when dealing with medication for very young children. The original study aimed to investigate fluoxetine for depression in this age group, a topic that already carries a lot of ethical weight and requires extremely rigorous evidence. The critics are pointing out that the evidence presented in the published paper has too many question marks to be considered solid. What does this mean for us? Well, it means we need to be cautious about drawing conclusions from this specific study. When research has so many methodological concerns, it is hard to trust its findings for parents and caregivers considering treatment for their young children. This highlights the importance of discussing any treatment options thoroughly with healthcare professionals and understanding the evidence behind them. It also underscores the need for transparency and adherence to established research guidelines in all scientific studies, especially those involving vulnerable populations. Future research in this area, if it proceeds, needs to be meticulously planned and executed with clear protocols, robust blinding, and transparent reporting of all data, including adverse events. It's through this kind of critical analysis that science moves forward, by identifying weaknesses and pushing for higher standards. Your thoughts on this are always welcome. Let me know in the comments below what you think about using antidepressants in very young children and the importance of rigorous scientific research. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more breakdowns of fascinating psychology and science research. See you next time.